Hello and welcome to Transmission. Tonight I am joined by Jem. Welcome.
Thank you.
So Jem, could you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, I identify as genderqueer. I'm a counsellor. I'm also a library officer and a volunteer.
So whereabouts do you do volunteer work?
Here and there, but I guess one organisation is Genderqueer Australia and the Zoe Bell Gender Centre.
Okay. So Genderqueer Australia, so what sort of stuff do you do with that organisation?
It's basically a group that's set up for people who identify as genderqueer or trans or just questioning their gender, and we hold social afternoons on the first Saturday of every month.
Cool. So so genderqueer, so for someone who's not sort of familiar, what does genderqueer actually mean?
Well, I guess genderqueer means you could be trans, or you could identify as not quite. I don't know, actually. It's a really difficult term to try and encapsulate into one, but it's someone who's gender diverse. So it could be a trans person, it could be someone who just likes playing around with gender and androgyny, but we're really welcoming of all, including stuffed animals.
Excellent. They often get forgotten, the stuffed animals, of
It's
course.
very true, yes,
So I suppose, so what does genderqueer mean for you personally? What when you say that sort of you identify as genderqueer, what does that mean for you?
So I guess for me, genderqueer is I don't identify as female or male. I'm not really wanting to go down the whole track of having surgery to try and fit into one gender or another. And I just like being in between and I guess trying to blur the lines a little bit.
Yeah. And so when did you first start to sort of get awareness of your gender identity and start to, I suppose, play around with it a little bit?
When I discovered Drag Kings, which would have been in, God, 99, which is going back a bit.
Yeah.
But seeing Drag Kings, so girls dressing up as guys on stage, binding their chest, I just thought that looked really interesting, both as a performance, but also as playing around with your body or your identity.
Yeah.
So I guess I knew it then, and then I guess getting to know the trans community a little bit more and meeting people who identified as transgender.
Yeah.
That's kind of when I got an idea.
That you wanted to...
Kind of, yeah, that being a tomboy could be something I do for the rest of my life, that I don't have to fit into being a girl.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I suppose because, like, in terms of with genderqueer, in terms of like coming out as trans is can be quite easy, and well, not easy, but easy in terms of telling people I want you to use male pronouns, I identify as a guy, that sort of thing. People tend to understand that a little bit. Do you have you found sort of difficulties in coming out to people as genderqueer?
Yes, because I think I don't tell people. That's the main thing. So I don't actually come out and say, hey, guess what, I'm genderqueer, can you please call me this or use these pronouns?
Yeah.
But I think more and more I'm just asking, can you call me Jem? Can you not use pronouns? And I just go from there.
Yeah. So are there any situations where you do actually say, look, I am genderqueer, like, and sort of come out and do that, or not so much?
Yes, and I think I do it more in public situations or with strangers. So if with volunteer work and with work, if I'm at and about community event or here, for instance, I find it completely okay to talk about. But in work as a counsellor, if I'm working with a client or even with staff, I'm less likely to mention it.
Yeah.
Just because not knowing how to then explain this huge list.
Yeah. I suppose with that, does that mean that there's some form of, because if people don't necessarily know that you're identifying as genderqueer, so then perhaps using wrong pronouns and things like that, how do you manage to balance that sort of discomfort potentially with people using wrong pronouns?
Well, initially when, I guess, pre-genderqueer, I had a huge issue. I wanted to transition, I wanted to have surgery and be seen as male. And then after, I guess, finding a bit more balance inside myself and going onto hormones, I just found that I just didn't care what people saw. It was about being happy within myself.
Yeah. So so you did sort of start hormones, and how was that process in terms of getting hormones when you're not necessarily identifying as a guy to sort of get how did that go?
Sometimes there's a lot of hoop jumping. I
Yep.
guess what the trans community says is jumping through hoops to get what you want. I try to be as honest to myself as possible.
Yeah.
But it is difficult when you want something and you know what you have to get through to get there.
And did you have specific? Was there any specific sort of obstacles that were quite difficult to overcome, or were all sort of manageable in the long run?
I guess the most difficult is trying to explain to someone, a medical professional or mental health professional, that you do not want to become a guy. And then for them to get their heads around it when they've been supporting the transgender community for so long.
And do you think that that's something that is going to potentially get easier as more people, because for me personally is that I've noticed a lot more people are talking about that they're sort of that gender fluidity and gender queer and gender non-conforming and all of those. Do you think that that's going to sort of have that flow-on effect and eventually be a little bit easier, or do you think it's a long way off still?
I think it is. I think it's already starting. I know a lot of young people are finding it a lot easier to kind of come out as genderqueer or not quite sure.
Yeah.
And definitely the trans community have got a lot of support with some medical professionals around Melbourne. So I think we're definitely going in the right direction, and we can see from overseas that people are already starting to just be who they want to be and not needing to go to male or female and have specific surgery.
Do you find within the trans community itself that there's a feeling that sort of genderqueer is you're not quite trans enough, or is there any of that sort of negativity, I suppose, towards being genderqueer?
I don't want to speak on behalf of the community,
Yeah.
but I know for me, I always thought I'm not trans enough, because I guess in my previous life, being seen as too dykey or too lesbian or too much of this or that, so not really feeling part of the community. And I guess still now it's hard when I'm interacting with people knowing that someone's maybe transitioned in the sense of they've had surgery and been on hormones for a year. I sometimes feel not jealous, but like I would like to be able to have that kind of life, to just be very straightforward and just go from one to another gender.
Yeah, I suppose it's not always that simple,
Yes.
unfortunately, and that sort of coming back to comfort within yourself and things like that. So doing some amazing stuff in terms of voluntary work with Genderqueer Australia and Zoe Bell Gender Centre. Thank you so much, Gem, for joining us tonight and sharing us a little bit about your story. So a big thank you to Gem. You've been watching Transmission.